As we continue to learn about quadrilaterals, this is kind of a summary of what we've been talking about the last day or so. Remember, a quadrilateral is a figure with 4 sides, and it's just a really good review. This is your lesson out of your blue math book. Now, polygons with 4 sides and 4 angles are quadrilaterals. You will see the blue ones and the red ones, and we're going to talk about those in just a second. The blue ones are all examples of different kinds of quadrilaterals, and we had a little chance to classify those in our last lesson. Now, they all have a closed figure versus over here a non-closed figure. Remember when we learned about polygons, it has to be a closed figure. It also has to have straight lines. It cannot have those curved lines like you see in this red figure. And finally, they all have 4 sides, whereas this figure right here is a triangle and only has 3 sides. One of the reasons I kind of like this lesson is it goes into a little bit more about what a trapezoid is. A trapezoid is a special kind of quadrilateral. Trapezoids always have 1 pair of parallel sides, and remember, that's what's super important about our trapezoids, to know that they only have 1 pair of parallel sides. But the sizes of the angles are not always the same. And we talked about that in our last lesson, about how they can be different sizes and even have a different look to them. And this is a really good example of that. If you look at example A, this particular trapezoid has 2 right angles, 1 acute angle right down here, and 1 obtuse angle up above that. It does have just the 1 pair of parallel sides though. Example B has 2 acute angles, 2 obtuse angles, and 1 pair of parallel sides. And once again, trapezoid is special because it only has that 1 pair. Now, we've talked about some of these other quadrilaterals. Here are some quadrilaterals with pairs of parallel sides and pairs of equal sides. If you look at the first ones, those are called parallelograms. I kind of like to equate those to the rhombus of the rectangle, so to speak. Now, we talked about earlier that a rhombus and a square are basically the same thing, but the rhombus doesn't have the right angles. Well, if you look at those parallelograms, what do you notice about them? They still have 2 pairs of parallel sides and 2 pairs of equal sides, but what are they missing? They do not have those 4 right angles like the rectangles do. If we look at our rhombuses, we have 2 pairs of parallel sides, 4 equal sides. Okay, they fit that. That's what we need to look at on our checklist for a rhombus, but look how different those look. One's kind of a diamond shape, and the other one's kind of looks like a square that's been sat on, but it doesn't have the right angles, so we know it can't be a square. And then finally we have our rectangles, and those are probably some of the ones that we're most familiar with. We have 2 pairs of parallel sides, 2 pairs of equal sides, and we've got those 4 right angles, which is super important when we're talking about the rectangles. And finally, the superhero, the one I keep referring to as he can do it all. He's got 2 pairs of parallel sides, 4 equal sides, 4 right angles. Now, as we get further into this lesson, it's super important to remember that a lot of these quadrilaterals fit into several of these classifications. For example, a square is also a rhombus because it has the 2 pairs of parallel sides, just like what you see here, and it's got 4 equal sides. Now, where it's different is it has the 4 right angles. So a square can be a rhombus, but a rhombus cannot be a square because what's it missing right here? It's missing those really super important 4 right angles. Now, as we talk about this next section, why is a square a rectangle? Well, it goes back to like what we just talked about. It has 2 sets of parallel sides, okay? And it has the 4 right angles. So once again, a square can be a rectangle, but a rectangle cannot be a square. You seen why I call the square the superhero? He does it all. And finally, why is a square a parallelogram? Because it has 2 sets of parallel sides, right? Now the big idea out of this, we always look at the exclamation mark there. You can name and sort quadrilaterals by looking at their sides and angles. That's what we've been talking about for the past 2 days. We're going to do a couple of these together and then you'll be responsible for the rest, but let's take a look at number 1. It says, describe the sides and angles of this quadrilateral. What's another name for it? Once again, you need to use your checklist. Okay, I am seeing that I have 2 sets of parallel lines. I am also seeing that I have some right angles in this. Now, I know that my sides aren't all equal, so it can't be a square, so it has to be a rectangle. So on this one, the answer is rectangle. On numbers 2 through 4, we're going to be taking a look at these shapes here on the side in red. It says, which quadrilaterals have 2 pairs of parallel sides? Once again, you're going to have more than one answer here. Okay. If you look at the first one, do we have 2 sets of parallel sides on that one? No, because this is a trapezoid. It only has that 1 set, so we know we can't use that one. How about F? Does this have 2 sets of parallel sides? Yes. So we know that we have F here. Okay. How about H? I see my 1 set of parallel lines, but I don't see 2, so I don't want to choose that one. Let's take a look at J. I see 1 set of parallel lines this way and 1 set of parallel lines that way. So I know I also want J. And finally, figure G. I see I have 1 set that goes this way and 1 set that goes this way. So it also has 2 sets, doesn't it? So we're going to put the G there. Number 3, which quadrilaterals have 2 or more right angles? Okay, this one, we're specifically looking at the angles. If you look in E, there are no right angles. How about F? Oh, 4 right angles. So I definitely want that one, right? Okay. How about G down here? Oh, I'm not seeing any right angles on that. I can't make a corner on any of them. How about H up here? I'm seeing 1, 2. Remember, they're asking me if there's 2 or more, so does H qualify for this one? Yes, it does. So we're going to put a letter H there. And how about J? Well, I see that that's a rectangle, and I know that that has 4 right angles. So I know that I need to put a letter J also. Number 4, how are the quadrilateral E and quadrilateral G alike? Okay. If we look at E and G, I notice that they both have a set of acute angles. And they also have a set of obtuse angles. Okay. Now, how are they different? Well, E is a trapezoid, G is a parallelogram. Now, looking at our checklist, that tells me that G has 2 sets of parallel lines, and E, because it's a trapezoid, only has 1. Now this is where it gets tricky. You're going to want to refer back to lesson 101 or the pages in this book. It says write as many names for each quadrilateral as you can. On number 5, okay, we have a square, right? It has two sets of parallel lines. It has 4 equal sides. It has 4 right angles. So I know it's a square. Okay? It can also be a what? It can be a parallelogram because it has 2 sets of parallel sides. Okay? It can also be a rectangle because it has 2 sets of parallel lines and 4 right angles. Now remember, our square is the superhero, isn't it? Okay, he does it all. It's also a rhombus. We've got 4 sets of equal sides, so therefore it's a rhombus. So we're going to be listing a lot of names for that one, aren't we? The best way to do this section of your math is to use that checklist and go through and ask yourself those questions. For example, let's look at number 6. First of all, I know it has 2 sets of parallel lines. It's a parallelogram, isn't it? Okay. Is it a rectangle? I can look at that and I go, oh, nope, no right angles. If it doesn't have right angles, it also can't be a square. The sides aren't equal, so it can't be a rhombus. So my only choice there is a parallelogram. Okay, you will continue to do the rest of these exactly the same way.